The alarm screamed through the 45th floor like sirens in a war zone. Smoke coiled through the halls. Chaos spread like wildfire. But while everyone was running for their lives, one man ran the other way, tore through the blaze. He wasn't a firefighter. He wasn't security. He was just a single dad with calloused hands, a faded backpack, and something clutched inside that no one expected to matter until it changed everything. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. The first thing Victoria Hayes noticed as the fire alarm blared wasn't the chaos. It was the man sprinting up the stairs. Everyone else was shoving for the exits, panicked and loud. But this man, he was steady, eyes locked forward, like he had a purpose far more personal than survival. She didn't know his name. She didn't know he was the same janitor who fixed the flickering office lights 2 nights ago, politely refusing the tip she offered with a quiet, "Ma'am, I'm just doing my job." But right now, while her team screamed about documents and détails and stock reports, Victoria stood frozen by the conference room door, staring at the man who vanished into the smoke, like he'd done this before, like this wasn't his first fire. Then she heard a cry from the corner office, and the weight of her position, CEO of Horizon Dynamics, snapped her out of her trance. One of her interns was trapped. She turned to call for help. But before she could finish shouting, the same man burst out from the smoke, carrying the intern in his arms, coughing hard, but eyes sharp. The man gently laid the intern down, immediately checking vital signs with practiced precision. His movements weren't panicked, they were methodical, trained. He tore a piece of his own shirt, soaked it with his water bottle, and placed it over the intern's mouth. "Breathe slowly through this. It filters some of the smoke," he instructed, voice calm but authoritative. He handed her off to security, barely acknowledging the cameras or the frantic gratitude from bystanders. Victoria locked eyes with him. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. He just pulled a tattered notepad from his pocket and dropped it. It hit the floor face up. There were complex equations scribbled across the pages. Formulas, graphs, algorithms she hadn't seen since her MIT days. By the time she looked up, he was gone. Raymond Miller had once been a different man with a different life. 15 years ago, his name appeared on research papers about artificial intelligence systems that could predict supply chain disruptions. His lectures at MIT drew standing room-only crowds. Students competed for spots in his advanced logistics optimization seminar. Colleagues called him brilliant. The industry called him visionary. That was before Catherine got sick. Now at 45, his hands were rough from industrial cleaning supplies instead of chalk dust. His back ached from mopping floors instead of standing at lecture podiums. And the only person who called him anything was his 9-year-old son, Tommy, who simply called him Dad. Raymond parked his rusted Ford pickup in the small driveway of their modest 2-bedroom house. The porch light flickered another thing he needed to fix this weekend. Inside, Mrs. Henderson, their elderly neighbor, who watched Tommy after school, was dozing in the armchair. "How was he today?" Raymond asked softly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She blinked awake. "Good as gold. Finished his homework. That boy of yours is smart as a whip, Raymond. Just like his daddy." After Mrs. Henderson left, Raymond found Tommy at the kitchen table, frowning over an extra credit math problem. "Dad, I don't get it. The teacher says we need to use the formula, but I don't understand why it works." Raymond pulled up a chair. These moments, this was what he lived for now. "Math isn't just about formulas, Tommy. It's about understanding the world." He grabbed a salt shaker and a pepper shaker. "Let me show you something my father showed me when I was just about your age." For the next half hour, kitchen items became mathematical concepts. A salt shaker became an integer. A plate became a plane. Spaghetti became vectors. Tommy's eyes widened as the abstract became tangible. "See, mathematics exists everywhere around us. Your grandfather taught me that. He worked on the assembly lines at Ford for 30 years, but he understood mechanical engineering better than most college graduates." Tommy's eyes drifted to the framed photograph on the wall. Catherine's smile beamed back at them, wide, bright, frozen in time. She was sitting on a beach, their younger selves on either side of her, all three sunburned and laughing. "Mom would have been good at explaining math too, right?" Raymond swallowed hard. The best. She could break down the most complex theories until they felt like common sense. Later, after Tommy was asleep, Raymond sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee gone cold. He opened the worn photo album Catherine had meticulously kept. Their wedding, his MIT graduation, Catherine's research award ceremony, Tommy's birth, the three of them at the Grand Canyon just months before her diagnosis. "I'm trying, Cat," he whispered to the empty room. "I'm trying to be enough for him." Raymond's alarm would ring at 4:30 a.m. He'd prepare Tommy's lunch, leave breakfast, instructions, drop off a still sleeping Tommy at Mrs. Henderson's, and arrive at Horizon Dynamics by 6:00 a.m. He'd clean offices until 2:30 p.m., rush to pick up Tommy from school at 3:15 p.m., help with homework, make dinner, handle bath time, read bedtime stories, and collapse into bed himself by 10:00 p.m. Rinse and repeat every day. For 5 years now. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was the life that kept Tommy safe, fed, and loved. And that was enough. The boardroom of Horizon Dynamics hummed with tension. Victoria Hayes stood at the head of the table, her tailored navy suit a stark contrast to the sea of gray and black surrounding her. At 42, she was one of the youngest CEOs in the tech industry, and today possibly one of the most vulnerable. The Horizon Nav system failure cost us over $20 million in the military logistics trial, said board member Franklin Ross, not bothering to hide his disdain. Our stock has plummeted 32%. Pinnacle Systems is already circling like vultures offering to buy our contracts. Victoria kept her voice level. "I'm well aware of our position, Franklin." "Then you're also aware that Pinnacle will debut their own system in 3 months, added Diane Winters, another board member. "If they succeed where we failed, Horizon Dynamics becomes obsolete overnight." Victoria tapped her tablet, projecting a timeline onto the wall screen. "Our engineering team is working around the clock to identify and correct the failure points. We believe him. "Your engineering team has had 6 months to fix this," interrupted Ross. "It's time we consider replacing leadership, both in engineering and perhaps higher." The threat hung in the air. Victoria felt the weight of 20 pairs of eyes. From the corner of the room, a gravelly voice broke the silence. "I seem to recall similar conversations in 1987 when our first microprocessor design failed spectacularly." All heads turned to the elderly man seated in a leather chair slightly removed from the table. Walter Grayson, 75, former CTO and now senior advisor emeritus to the board. His suit was at least a decade out of fashion, but no one would dare comment on it. Walter had built the original foundations of what became Horizon Dynamics from his garage in the late 1970s. "And as I recall," Walter continued, finger steepled, "had we followed the board's recommendation then to scrap everything and follow the crowd, none of us would be sitting in this very expensive room today." Franklin's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, Walter, the tech landscape has changed since your day. We can't afford the sentimentality." Walter's eyes twinkled dangerously. "Is that what you call it? I call it perspective. Experience, the understanding that innovation rarely follows a straight line." He turned to Victoria. "You have a plan beyond what your engineers are telling you." Victoria nodded. "I do. I need 2 more weeks." Walter looked around the table. "The lady gets her 2 weeks, then we reconvene." No one, not even Franklin, dared to contradict him. As the board members filed out, Walter approached Victoria. "They're scared," he said simply. "Fear makes smart people stupid." Victoria sighed. "I'm running out of options, Walter." The old man patted her shoulder. "When a problem seems unsolvable, it usually means you're looking at it through the wrong lens. Sometimes the answer comes from the most unexpected places." She had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. The fire had started in a server room on the 44th floor. Electrical malfunction, they said. By the time Raymond arrived for his evening shift, the cleanup crews were already at work. The acrid smell of smoke still hung in the air. Miller called his supervisor. "They need extra hands upstairs. Grab your cart." As Raymond pushed his cleaning cart into the executive suite, he overheard fragments of conversation. "Backup systems completely fried. Prototype data might be salvageable. Board meeting tomorrow will be a bloodbath." He kept his head down, focusing on the task at hand. It wasn't his business. None of it was. He was here to clean floors, empty trash, wipe down surfaces. Do his job, collect his paycheck, take care of Tommy. Simple. The next evening, Raymond was mopping the East Wing corridor when the fire alarm shrieked to life. His first thought was Tommy safely at Mrs. Henderson's. His second was of Catherine and how in another life he'd been trained for emergencies. Before he consciously decided to move, he was already running. Not toward the exits like everyone else, but up, toward the sound of that distant cry for help. The smoke was thicker than he expected. He pulled his shirt over his mouth, dropped low, and pushed forward. His eyes stung. Years ago, during a summer internship with a defense contractor, he'd gone through emergency response training. The memories surfaced like muscle memory. He found the intern huddled under a desk, paralyzed with fear. Without hesitation, he scooped her up. "Keep your face against my shoulder." Short breaths. The journey back through the smoke-filled corridor seemed longer. His lungs burned. But then they were through, emerging into the clear air of the main hallway. As he handed the young woman to security, he became acutely aware of Victoria Hayes watching him. The CEO. He'd seen her before, of course, while cleaning her office after hours, had fixed her flickering light fixtures just days ago. "Who are you?" she asked. But there was no time for introductions. The notebook he always carried as one connection to his former self had slipped from his pocket in the commotion. He reached for it, but it had already fallen open at her feet. He didn't stay to explain the equations. Didn't stay to see her expression change from confusion to recognition. Instead, he disappeared into the crowd of evacuees, just another nameless face in a sea of chaos. Later that night, as emergency vehicles still crowded the building's entrance, Raymond sat in his truck in the darkened parking garage. He pulled out his phone to call Mrs. Henderson to let her know he'd be late. A knock on his window made him jump. Victoria Hayes stood there, his notebook in her hand, her expression unreadable. The elevator was offline. Smoke still curled from the vents as Victoria stood clutching the notepad, stunned. Her assistant pulled her sleeve. "Ma'am, we need to get you to the ground floor." But Victoria wasn't hearing her. Her eyes were locked on the pages. These weren't just scribbles. They were theoretical layouts, complex systems designs, mathematical proofs, bordering on revolutionary logistics, optimization models. There were notes about heat displacement, rapid load balancing across modular systems, and something that looked eerily like a sketch of Horizon's failing AI logistics routing engine, but solved. And it was written in pencil on a janitor's notepad. On the curb outside the building, medics treated smoke victims. Her shoes clicked on the pavement as she surged through the dispersing crowd, pushing past suits in uniform. The man was nowhere in sight. "Did anyone see where the janitor went?" she asked security. The guard glanced up from his clipboard. "Which janitor?" "The one who carried the intern out. Tall, early 40s, dark hoodie, scruffy beard, kind of worn-down work boots." He squinted. "Oh, that's probably Miller. Raymond Miller. Night staff, comes in for cleanup and light repairs." She blinked. "Night staff?" "Yeah, I've been here about 3 months. Always quiet. Shows up, does his job, leaves. I think he's got a kid or something. And even something." A single dad with one notepad that might hold the key to saving her crumbling logistics division. That night, as her team worked in silence inside the executive boardroom, Victoria sat alone in her office reviewing each page of Raymond's notebook. She didn't understand everything, but what she did understand terrified her. Not because it was flawed, but because it was perfect. Horizon Dynamics had been bleeding for months. Their signature AI supply routing system had crashed during a major rollout, losing the company over $20 million in contracts. Their patents were outdated. Their innovation had plateaued, and shareholders were circling like sharks. Now in her hands, from a man paid minimum wage to clean the lobby floors, was a solution. She stayed in the building overnight. The next morning, she was in the basement. "Raymond Miller," she said, pushing open the janitorial locker room door. The man looked up slowly, mop in hand, eyes tired from long hours and years of keeping his head down. He looked at her like he was used to being invisible. "Yeah, I need to talk to you." He nodded once, slow and unsure. "About the fire?" "No, about the math." His brow furrowed. She stepped forward. She lifted the notepad. "This could be worth millions. It could save my company, my reputation. But more than that, Raymond, it's brilliant. How did you—" He sighed, voice low. "Used to teach math systems engineering, MIT. Left after my wife died, had to raise my son. It got complicated. She paused. MIT. He gave a small nod. I've been sketching ideas on my break. Just keeps my brain moving. You know, you could have walked away with a check last night. Or a job offer. I don't want charity, ma'am. I want work. Honest work. That's all. No, she said, stepping forward, eyes wide with something like urgency. You don't understand. I need you. He tilted his head. You're offering me a mop upgrade. I'm offering you a lab, a team, a title, and a damn office with windows. If your work can do what I think it can, we can revive Horizon from the ground up. Raymond looked down at his worn boots, silent for a beat, then softly. I don't know if I belong in a boardroom anymore. Victoria shook her head. No offense, but that notebook says otherwise. She reached out. And if you say no, I'll be the one mopping floors when Horizon collapses next month. He stared at her for a long moment and then nodded once. I'll need to pick up my son from school first. Ducked. The wind scraped cold against Raymond's denim jacket as he waited near the elementary school gate, one hand buried in his pocket, the other clenching Victoria's business card. He could still hear her words echoing, I need you. He hadn't heard that in years, not without a trace of pity, not from someone powerful, not from someone who looked him in the eye like he mattered. The school bell rang and the noise of children burst through the front doors. Raymond's son, Tommy, came running toward him with a toothy grin and his backpack bouncing wildly. Dad, you're early. Yep, Raymond smiled, ruffling Tommy's hair. Felt like today was going to be different. Tommy's face lit up. Can we get grilled cheese on the way home? Raymond hesitated. He looked down at the wrinkled bill in his pocket, mentally calculating their remaining budget for the week. Tell you what, he said. How about we go home and you make the grilled cheese? You're the master now. Tommy nodded excitedly, oblivious to the storm brewing behind his father's calm eyes. As they drove home in the old pickup truck, Tommy chattering about his day, Raymond's mind raced. The business card in his pocket felt heavier than it should. Dad, are you listening? Raymond blinked. Sorry, buddy, just thinking. About what? How do you explain to a 9-year-old that your entire life might change overnight? That the skills you buried for his sake might be resurfacing? That the father he knew, the janitor, the handyman, the steady presence might become someone else entirely? Just grown-up stuff. Hey, tell me more about that science project you mentioned. That night after Tommy was tucked in, Raymond sat at the kitchen table under the weak light of a hanging bulb. His fingers hovered over his notepad pages of ideas he'd once scribbled between janitor shifts, homework help, and late-night tears. He flipped to a new page and began writing not mathematical formulas this time, but a simple list of pros and cons. Pro: more money for Tommy's future. Better health care. Maybe a house with a yard someday. Con: less predictable hours, new pressures, potential failure. Pro: using his mind again, making a difference. Con: what if he wasn't good enough anymore? He glanced at the photograph on the wall. Catherine smiling, always smiling. What would you do, Cat? He whispered. The photo offered no answers, but as Raymond stared at it, he remembered something his own father had told him decades ago. Samuel Miller had worked the assembly lines at Ford for 30 years, had raised 3 children on a blue-collar salary, had sent all of them to college despite never finishing high school himself. Son, he'd said the night before Raymond left for MIT, opportunities don't care about timing. They don't wait until you're ready. You grab them when they appear, or you spend your life wondering what if. Raymond picked up his phone and dialed Victoria's number. I'll take the job, he said when she answered, but I have conditions. My son comes first. I need flexibility for school pickup, for doctor's appointments, for his activities. There was a pause on the other end, then done. When can you start? Raymond looked at the calendar on the wall at Tommy's school schedule, carefully noted in his own neat handwriting. Monday, 9 a.m. As he hung up, Raymond felt something he hadn't felt in years, a flutter of possibility of purpose beyond survival. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, he could be both the father Tommy needed and the man he used to be. For 5 years he'd existed. Perhaps now he could live again. Raymond sat on the edge of Tommy's bed watching his son sleep. The digital clock on the nightstand read 11:47 p.m. In just over 9 hours, he would walk into Horizon Dynamics not as a janitor, but as what exactly Victoria had mentioned, a title senior systems architect. Words that had once defined him before grief and necessity redefined everything. Is this right, Kat? He whispered to the darkness. Am I being selfish, taking this chance? He thought of his own father again. Samuel Miller had worked hard labor his entire life, so his children wouldn't have to. Had sacrificed his dreams so Raymond could chase his. Was Raymond honoring that sacrifice by hiding his abilities, by shrinking himself to fit inside a janitor's uniform? Or was he honoring it by showing Tommy that second chances existed, that reinvention was possible, that horizons could expand again after contracting Dad? Tommy's sleepy voice startled him. Hey, buddy, sorry, didn't mean to wake you. Is everything okay? Raymond smoothed Tommy's hair. Everything's fine, but I need to tell you something. There's going to be a change. Tommy sat up suddenly alert. Are we moving again? No, we're staying put, but I'm going to have a different job, at the same building but doing different work. Not cleaning anymore. Raymond shook his head. Remember how I used to be a teacher at a university? Tommy nodded. He'd seen the photographs, asked the questions. Well, the company I work for, they need someone to solve a big problem, and they think I can help. Tommy studied his father's face in the dim light. Will you be home later? Will Mrs. Henderson still watch me? I'll still take you to school. Mrs. Henderson will still be there after. I might have to work later some days, but I promise. His voice caught. I promise I'll always be there when you really need me. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Then he wrapped his arms around Raymond's neck. Dad, I think Mom would be really proud. Raymond held his son tight, grateful for the darkness that hid his tears. Monday morning arrived with unforgiving clarity. Raymond stood in front of his closet, staring at options that seemed absurdly inadequate. His one suit purchased 15 years ago for job interviews hung like a relic from another man's life. Next to it, a row of janitor uniforms, practical and anonymous. He settled on a clean pair of khakis, a blue button-down shirt Catherine had given him their last Christmas together, and a navy blazer that still fit reasonably well. The man in the mirror looked caught between worlds, not quite a janitor anymore, not quite a professor again. Tommy assessed him over breakfast. You look different? Good different or bad different? Tommy tilted his head, considering. Just different, but your shoes are still the same. Raymond glanced down at his worn work boots. He hadn't even thought about shoes. They were practical, comfortable, durable, the only pair he owned besides sneakers. Guess some things don't need to change, he said with a half smile. The lobby of Horizon Dynamics looked entirely different at 9 a.m. than it did during Raymond's usual night shifts. Sunlight streamed through the glass atrium. Well-dressed professionals bustled past with coffee cups and tablets. Security guards who usually greeted Raymond with casual familiarity now looked at him with suspicion. I'm supposed to meet Victoria Hayes, he told the front desk attendant, who eyed his boots with barely concealed judgment. Do you have an appointment? Before Raymond could answer, Victoria herself emerged from an elevator. Raymond, right on time. She extended her hand. Welcome to your first day, officially. As they rode the elevator to the 47th floor executive territory, Raymond had only ever cleaned, never occupied. Victoria outlined the situation. The board has given me 2 weeks to demonstrate progress. They don't know about you yet. I thought it would be easier to show results first, then explain the unorthodox hiring. Raymond nodded, understanding the subtext. He was a risk. A janitor turned savior wasn't the story tech executives wanted to hear. The elevator doors opened to reveal a sleek corridor of glass and steel. Victoria led him to a large corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. This is yours now, she said. Raymond stopped in the doorway. The space was 3 times the size of his living room at home. A massive whiteboard covered one wall. A state-of-the-art computer setup dominated a modern desk. The view of the city stretched out like a promise. This is too much, he said quietly. No, Victoria replied. If anything, it's not enough. A knock at the door interrupted them. A young man with stylish glasses and an expensive haircut stood there, tablet in hand. Ms. Hayes, the engineering team is assembled in conference room A. Thank you, Ethan. This is Raymond Miller, our new senior systems architect. Raymond, this is Ethan Park, VP of engineering. Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Interesting. I don't recall any new senior positions being approved. Victoria's voice remained pleasant but firm. It was a direct CEO appointment. Raymond will be leading the Horizon Nav rebuild. Ethan's posture stiffened. With all due respect, my team has been working on this problem for months. We don't need a last-minute addition to, Your team has failed to fix the core issues for 6 months, Ethan. We're trying something new. Victoria checked her watch. Shall we meet the others? The conference room fell silent as Victoria entered with Raymond. 8 engineers in expensive casual wear stared at them with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Team, this is Raymond Miller. He has some innovative approaches to our routing optimization issues. He'll be leading this phase of the rebuild. A woman in her early 30s spoke first. What's his background? Victoria began to answer, but Raymond stepped forward. I have a PhD in applied mathematics from MIT. I taught there for 12 years, specializing in complex systems and logistics optimization. I've published 37 papers on AI predictive modeling. He paused. More recently, I've been working in building maintenance. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Building maintenance, Ethan repeated. You mean what facilities management? Raymond met his gaze steadily. I mean, I've been working as a janitor. Here, on the night shift. The silence that followed was deafening. From the back of the room, a gravelly voice broke through. Well, I'll be damned. Victoria, you found yourself a real-life Good-Will Hunting. Walter Grayson stood in the doorway, his weathered face creased in a smile. Mind if I observe, been a while since I've seen engineers actually solve problems instead of just talking about them. Victoria gestured to an empty chair. Please, Walter, your input would be invaluable. Raymond turned to the whiteboard, uncapped a marker, and began to write. Not on a tablet or a computer, with his own hand, in flowing lines of mathematical poetry that soon covered the surface. Your current architecture looks like this, he said, sketching a system diagram. But your fundamental flaw is here. His marker circled a section. You're approaching the routing as a static optimization problem when it's actually a dynamic equilibrium challenge. One by one, the younger engineers leaned forward. Whatever they'd expected from this strange janitor professor, it wasn't this level of insight. Walter watched with growing delight as Raymond dismantled months of flawed assumptions in 20 minutes of hand-drawn diagrams. By lunchtime, even Ethan had fallen silent, his tablet forgotten as he stared at Raymond's expanding solution architecture. It's elegant, admitted a young engineer named Sophia. I've never seen anyone approach the load balancing this way. Raymond capped his marker. It's not new. This approach dates back to early network theory from the 1960s. Sometimes old solutions work best for new problems. Walter nodded approvingly. The young folks think everything worthwhile was invented after smartphones. But the foundation's the real mathematics. That's timeless. Victoria observed from the corner, watching her gamble begin to pay off. For the first time in months, there was energy in the room. Hope even. As the team filed out for lunch, Ethan lingered behind. Where did you find him? He asked Victoria quietly. He found us, she replied. Sometimes the answers are already in the building. We just have to look in unexpected places. That evening, Raymond entered the small apartment with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. His mind hadn't been this engaged in years. He'd forgotten the rush of intellectual challenge, the satisfaction of equations clicking into place. Tommy looked up from his homework. How was the new job? Raymond hung his jacket. Different. Good different, I think. Did they like your ideas? Some did, some aren't sure yet. Tommy nodded sagely. That's what happens when you're the new kid. At first, nobody knows if they want to be your friend. Raymond smiled at his son's simple wisdom. Very true. How was school? We're doing a science project about building bridges. I told Ms. Perkins my dad is a scientist now, and she didn't believe me. Raymond felt a pang of something between pride and sadness. Did that bother you? Tommy shrugged. I know the truth. That's what matters, right? That's what you always say. Later, after Tommy was asleep, Raymond spread his notes across the kitchen table. Victoria had loaded him with technical documentation, access credentials, system architecture, diagrams. The challenge was enormous. Horizon's Horizon Nav system was supposed to revolutionize military and commercial logistics, predicting supply chain disruptions, optimizing routing in real time, adapting to changing conditions without human intervention. But something in the core architecture was fundamentally flawed. The system would work under test conditions, then catastrophically fail under real-world stress. Raymond sketched ideas until past midnight, then packed everything away. Tomorrow would come early, and Tommy needed breakfast and a dad who wasn't half asleep at the morning table. The board meeting was even more tense than Victoria had anticipated. Franklin Ross paced at the head of the table, jabbing his finger at projected graphs of declining stock values. 2 more weeks, Victoria. That's what we agreed to. It's been one, and I've seen nothing that suggests a breakthrough. Victoria maintained her composure. We've completely restructured our approach. The new architecture addresses the fundamental flaws in the original design. New architecture? Diane Winters raised an eyebrow. Your engineering team has been insisting for months that the architecture was sound. We've brought in some fresh perspective, Franklin scoffed. A consultant at this stage, more delays, more expenses. Not a consultant, Victoria countered. A new team lead with significant expertise in complex systems optimization. And who is this miracle worker? Victoria hesitated. His name is Dr. Raymond Miller. He has extensive academic credentials from MIT and practical experience in system design. Never heard of him, Franklin dismissed. Where was he working before Horizon, the moment of truth? Victoria looked Franklin in the eye. Here, as a member of our maintenance staff. The room erupted in disbelieving exclamations. You put a janitor in charge of our 9-figure system rebuild. Franklin's face flushed red. This isn't a feel-good movie, Victoria. This is a publicly traded company on the verge of collapse. I put a brilliant systems architect who happens to have been working as a janitor in charge. Victoria corrected. Judge the work, not the title. This is absurd, Diane sputtered. The board never approved. The board approved giving me 2 weeks, Victoria interrupted. How I use those 2 weeks is my prerogative as CEO. Franklin slammed his hand on the table. I move for an emergency vote of no confidence. Seconded, Diane added quickly. From his corner seat, Walter Grayson cleared his throat. The room immediately quieted. Before we engage in corporate theatrics, he said, rising slowly to his feet, perhaps we should actually examine the work being done. Walter shuffled to the front of the room, inserting a thumb drive into the presentation system. The screen filled with complex diagrams. I've been observing Dr. Miller's work this week. What you're looking at represents more progress than your highly paid engineering team has made in 6 months. He clicked through slides showing simulation results, optimization curves, failure mode analyses. In 1979, Walter continued, I was laughed out of 3 venture capital firms before finding someone willing to fund Horizon's first prototype. Why? Because I didn't look the part. I was too old, too traditional, too much of a hardware guy in a software world. He looked around the room. Innovation doesn't care about appearances. Genius doesn't check credentials at the door. It shows up where it wants, when it wants. Franklin shifted uncomfortably. That's all very inspirational, Walter, but I'm not finished, Walter said firmly. I've reviewed Dr. Miller's academic work from his MIT days. The man is legitimate, brilliant even. The fact that life circumstances led him to maintenance work doesn't diminish his capabilities. If anything, it speaks to his character. Walter turned to Victoria. You have my full support and my personal guarantee to the board that this approach deserves our complete backing. In the tech world, few endorsements carried more weight than Walter Grayson's. One by one, board members began to back down. 1 more week, Franklin conceded reluctantly. But we'll need more than diagrams. We need a working prototype that can pass basic stress test. Victoria nodded. You'll have it. As the board members filed out, Walter approached Victoria. Your janitor is the real deal, he said quietly. Reminds me of myself 40 years ago. Brilliant but practical. Theory informed by reality. Thank you for the support, Victoria replied. It means a lot, especially from you. Walter's eyes twinkled. I've always had a soft spot for underdogs and second chances. Just make sure he delivers. Even my influence has limits. For the next week, Raymond worked like a man possessed. Days in the lab with the engineering team, evenings at home with Tommy, nights at the kitchen table with his notebooks. Sleep became optional. Food became functional. His world narrowed to equations, simulations, and his son's bedtime stories. The team had begun to respect him, if not entirely embrace him. Sophia, the young engineer who'd first acknowledged his approach, became his strongest ally. Ethan remained skeptical but professional, his initial hostility mellowing to cautious cooperation. On Thursday afternoon, Raymond stood before a massive wall screen displaying simulation results. Something wasn't right. The system performed beautifully under normal conditions, but still showed signs of instability under extreme stress. "We're missing something," he muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. Walter Grayson sat in the corner observing quietly as he had each day. "Talk it through," the older man suggested. "Sometimes the ears hear what the eyes miss." Raymond paced, thinking aloud. "The system handles predictable variations fine. It's the cascade failures that break it. When one node goes down, it triggers a chain reaction instead of a smooth redistribution." Walter nodded. "Sounds like a people problem as much as a math problem." "What do you mean?" "When I managed factory floors, we had similar issues with workflow. When one station backed up, everyone downstream panicked, made mistakes. The solution wasn't just in the process design. It was in teaching people to trust the system, to follow protocols even when things looked chaotic." Raymond stopped pacing. "Trust," he repeated slowly. "That's it. The nodes don't trust each other. Each is trying to optimize locally instead of globally when stress occurs." He rushed to the whiteboard, sketching rapidly. "We need to build trust protocols into the node communication layer. Reputation metrics that inform load balancing decisions under stress." Walter watched with satisfaction as Raymond's insight took shape on the board. "Simple elegance," the older man commented. "That's the hallmark of true solution architecture." Raymond worked through the night, fueled by coffee and breakthrough energy. By morning, he had a modified architecture that integrated trust protocols into the core routing algorithms. "Run the simulation again," he told Sophia, who had stayed late to help. They watched as the virtual network absorbed shock after shock, bending but never breaking. Nodes communicated adapted redistributed load across the system with fluid grace. "It's working," Sophia whispered. Raymond nodded, too tired for celebration. "Let's implement it in the prototype. We need real-world validation." Ethan entered the lab, looking surprised to find them still there. "You've been here all night," Raymond gestured to the screen. "We think we've solved the cascade failure problem." Ethan reviewed the results with growing amazement. This actually looks solid." He turned to Raymond. "How did you think of this approach?" "Sometimes you need to step back from the technology and remember that even AI systems reflect human behavior patterns," Raymond answered. "Walter helped me see it." The prototype implementation took another 2 days of intense work. The board demonstration was scheduled for Monday morning, exactly 2 weeks after Raymond's first day. On Sunday evening, Raymond was reviewing final simulations when his phone rang. Mrs. Henderson's number. "Raymond, it's Tommy. He's running a fever and he's asking for you." Raymond didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way." He found Tommy burning up at 102 degrees, curled on the couch at Mrs. Henderson's. "Dad," Tommy croaked, his face flushed. "Don't feel good." "I know, buddy. Let's get you home." At their apartment, Raymond gave Tommy medicine, placed a cool cloth on his forehead, and sat beside the bed just as he had during countless nights when Tommy was younger. His phone buzzed with messages from Victoria. "Final prep session tonight. Where are you? Owen. Board meeting at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Critical that everything is perfect." Raymond typed a simple reply. "Tommy's sick. With him now. We'll be ready tomorrow." He turned off his phone and focused entirely on his son. Some priorities never changed, no matter what job title he held. Raymond arrived at Horizon Dynamics at 7 a.m. Monday, having left Tommy sleeping comfortably with Mrs. Henderson once again watching over him. The fever had broken around 3 a.m., and Tommy had insisted his father go to the big meeting. "You have to show them how smart you are, Dad," he'd said earnestly. Victoria met Raymond in the hallway outside the demonstration lab, her expression a mixture of concern and tension. "Is your son all right?" "He's better. Thank you for asking." "Are we ready for this?" "The entire board will be there, plus representatives from the Defense Department procurement team." Raymond nodded. "The system is solid. The demonstration will work." Victoria studied him. "You seem very calm for someone whose career rebirth and my entire company are on the line." Raymond offered a small smile. When you've sat beside your son's hospital bed watching him fight pneumonia while grieving his motherboard meetings lose some of their terror. The demonstration lab filled quickly with board members, executives, and stern-faced military officials. Franklin Ross made a point of checking his watch repeatedly as technicians made final preparations. Walter Grayson sat in the front row giving Raymond an encouraging nod. Beside him was an unexpected face, James Westfield, CEO of Pinnacle Systems Horizon's chief competitor. Walter leaned over to whisper something to Raymond. Jimmy and I go back 50 years. Roommates at Stanford, competitors ever since. He caught wind of our demonstration and invited himself. Be prepared for tough questions. Raymond nodded, straightening his tie, a gift Victoria had sent to his home over the weekend, with a note that simply read, "For tomorrow." Victoria stepped to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience these past 2 weeks. Today we're demonstrating the completely redesigned core architecture of Horizon Nav, our next-generation logistics optimization system. And she gestured to Raymond. Dr. Raymond Miller, our senior systems architect, will lead the technical presentation. Raymond approached the front, acutely aware of his audience's skepticism. These were people who judged worth by pedigree, position appearances. He was none of what they expected. Good morning, he began. Rather than talk through specifications, I'd prefer to show you what the system can do. He turned to the large display. We've prepared a simulation of a major supply chain disruption scenario, specifically the simultaneous closure of 3 major ports due to a hurricane combined with a cyber attack on transportation networks. Raymond nodded to Sophia, who initiated the simulation. On screen, a virtual map displayed shipping routes, warehouses, and distribution centers. Red warnings began flashing as ports closed and networks failed. The room watched in silence as the Horizon Nav system detected the disruptions, calculated alternatives, and began rerouting shipments in real time. No bottlenecks formed. No cascading failures occurred. The system bent but never broke, adapting with almost organic fluidity to each new challenge. Previous versions of Horizon Nav would have collapsed under this scenario, Raymond explained. The fundamental flaw was in how nodes communicated under stress. We implemented what we call trust protocols, allowing each node to make decisions based not just on local optimization, but on system-wide reputation metrics. He walked them through the technical specifics using plain English, when possible detailed mathematics when necessary. Years of teaching complex concepts to undergraduates had made him adept at making the incomprehensible accessible. When the demonstration concluded, there was a moment of silence. Then James Westfield spoke up. Impressive recovery, Victoria. His voice carried the practiced charm of a career executive. But simulations are just that, simulations. How do we know this will perform in real-world conditions? Raymond met the competitor's gaze. Fair question. That's why we're not just showing simulations today. He nodded to Ethan, who pressed a key. A second screen illuminated, showing a live data feed. What you're seeing is the Horizon Nav prototype managing actual shipments for Horizon's internal supply chain. It's been running since Friday, handling real-world conditions, including an unexpected storm delay in the Midwest that occurred yesterday. Westfield leaned forward, clearly taken aback. You're running this in production already. Limited production, Raymond clarified. But yes, with real consequences and real results. Franklin Ross spoke next. And the performance metrics, Victoria stepped forward. 38% improvement in routing efficiency, 22% reduction in delay propagation, 15% cost savings projected over current methods. The room buzzed with impressed murmurs. Walter Grayson raised his hand. A question for Dr. Miller. The approach you've taken integrating trust protocols into the routing algorithms, it's unorthodox. Almost old-fashioned in its emphasis on reputation over pure efficiency. What inspired this direction? Raymond smiled slightly. My father worked assembly lines for 30 years. He always said the biggest difference between a smooth-running factory and a chaotic one wasn't the machinery, it was whether workers trusted each other when things went sideways. He gestured to the screen. AI systems reflect their creators' thinking. Most logistics optimization focuses on efficiency in ideal conditions. But real supply chains rarely operate in ideal conditions. They operate in a world of disruptions, human errors, and unexpected events. Just like humans, they need protocols for managing uncertainty and building resilience. Walter nodded approvingly. Sometimes old wisdom applies to new technologies. James Westfield stood. Victoria Walter, I've seen enough. Pinnacle Systems would like to discuss partnership options rather than competing bids on the upcoming defense contracts. The room fell silent. This was an unexpected victory, Pinnacle acknowledging Horizon's superior technology, offering collaboration instead of competition. Franklin Ross looked stunned. Partnership, you were ready to buy our scraps a week ago. Westfield shrugged elegantly. The landscape has changed. Your janitor just rewrote the rules of logistics optimization. I'd rather join forces than compete with that. Raymond winced at the janitor reference, but Victoria stepped in smoothly. We're open to discussions, James, perhaps after the Defense Department representatives have completed their evaluation. The military officials nodded approvingly. A stern-faced general approached Raymond afterward. Dr. Miller, that was exceptional work. The applications for battlefield logistics are significant. Thank you, sir. I understand you came to this position through an unusual career path. Raymond straightened. Yes, sir. Life takes unexpected turns sometimes. The general nodded. Indeed it does. My father was a janitor for 40 years at a high school in Nebraska. Smartest man I ever knew. Never had the opportunities he deserved. He extended his hand. Looking forward to working with you. As the room cleared, Victoria, Raymond, and Walter remained behind. We did it, Victoria said, the tension finally leaving her shoulders. The board is satisfied. The Defense Department is impressed. Even our biggest competitor wants to partner instead of fight. Walter clapped Raymond on the shoulder. Not bad for 2 weeks' work, son. Raymond's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Henderson. Tommy asking for you. Fever back. He looked up at Victoria. I need to go. My son, go, she said immediately. Family first. We'll handle the follow-up meetings. Raymond hesitated. Are you sure Westfield wants to discuss partnerships and none of that matters if your son needs you, Victoria finished firmly. We wouldn't be having those discussions without your work. Go be with Tommy. As Raymond rushed out, Walter watched him go with a thoughtful expression. That's a good man, he said quietly. Knows what truly matters. Victoria nodded. I've never met anyone with his combination of brilliance and humility. That's because most brilliant people haven't scrubbed toilets for a living, Walter replied. Oddly keeps ego in check, quite like life's hard lessons. Raymond sat beside Tommy's bed reading his favorite book aloud while the boy drifted in and out of sleep. The doctor had confirmed it was just a severe cold, nothing more serious, but it would take a few days of rest for Tommy to recover fully. A soft knock at the apartment door surprised him. It was after 9 p.m. He opened the door to find Victoria, Walter, and Sophia standing in the hallway holding takeout containers and a small gift bag. We thought you might need dinner, Victoria said, and we wanted to update you on the afternoon meetings. Raymond was momentarily speechless. In 5 years, no one from any job had ever come to his home shown interest in his life beyond work. That's very kind. Please come in. He glanced around the tiny apartment, suddenly aware of its shabbiness. It's not much. Walter waved away his concern. I grew up in a house half this size with twice as many people. It's a home, son. That's what matters. Sophia peeked into Tommy's room where the boy was now awake and curious about the visitors. You must be the famous Tommy, she said. Your dad talks about you all the time. Tommy smiled weakly. Are you a scientist too? I am. I work with your dad. Victoria handed Raymond the gift bag. For Tommy. Some books and a model bridge kit for when he's feeling better. You mentioned he was doing a science project on bridges. Raymond was touched by the thoughtfulness. Thank you. He'll love this. They settled in the small living room, eating Thai food from containers, while Victoria briefed Raymond on the day's developments. Pinnacle wants to license our trust protocols for their commercial shipping platform. The Defense Department has fast-tracked our contract. And the board, she smiled, the board is suddenly very pleased with my innovative hiring practices. Walter chuckled. Amazing how success changes perspectives. Tommy appeared in the doorway wrapped in his blanket. Dad, can I sit with you? Raymond made space on the couch. Just for a little while. These are my colleagues from work. Tommy studied each face carefully. Are you the ones who didn't believe my dad was smart at first? An awkward silence fell over the room. Walter laughed heartily. Out of the mouths of babes. Yes, young man, we're the fools who judged a book by its cover. But we've learned our lesson. Tommy nodded seriously. That's good. My dad says you should always look deeper than what's on the surface. Raymond felt a surge of pride as he looked at his son, wise beyond his years, resilient despite everything life had thrown at him. Later, after the visitors had left and Tommy was asleep again, Raymond sat at the kitchen table. His notebook was open, but instead of equations, he began writing a letter to Catherine. Something he did occasionally when milestones occurred: Tommy's first day of school, his first lost tooth, birthdays. Dear Cat, he wrote, today something changed. For the first time since losing you, I felt like myself again, not just a shadow going through the motions. Tommy saw it too. He told our visitors that they should look deeper than the surface, just like you always taught him. Outside, the city lights twinkled like distant stars. Inside the small apartment, a man who had lost himself in grief began to find his way back through the work he loved and the son who needed him to be whole again. But the journey wasn't over. The hardest challenges and the greatest rewards still lay ahead. Spring sunshine bathed the Horizon Dynamics campus as Raymond walked through the glass doors, Tommy at his side. 3 months had passed since the breakthrough demonstration. 3 months of accelerated development, growing responsibilities, and a life transformed. This place is huge. Tommy marveled, neck craned to take in the soaring atrium. And you work at the very top. Raymond nodded, guiding his son toward the security desk. Near the top, but I started at the bottom. Remember, every floor in between taught me something valuable. It was Saturday, take your child to work day at Horizon. Raymond had hesitated about bringing Tommy. His son had already visited once when he was sick, seen the modest reality of their life. Part of Raymond worried that exposing Tommy to the gleaming corporate world might create expectations, desires for material things they still couldn't afford despite his substantially improved salary. But Tommy had been insistent. I want to see where you build your robot brains, Dad. The security guard, the same one who had known Raymond only as the night janitor, half a year ago, smiled broadly. Dr. Miller, and this must be the famous Tommy. I've heard a lot about you, young man. Tommy beamed at being recognized. My dad says you keep everyone safe. I try my best, just like your dad keeps our systems running smooth. He handed Tommy a special visitor badge. VIP access. Don't lose it, okay? I won't, Tommy promised, pinning it carefully to his shirt with a seriousness that made Raymond smile. Carl, the security guard, leaned in closer to Raymond. Quite a change from your old maintenance badge, huh, Doc? Raymond nodded. Life takes unexpected turns. Sure does. My brother-in-law worked the line at GM for 30 years. Got laid off, went back to school at 58. Now he teaches auto shop at the community college. Says he should have been doing it all along. These were the conversations Raymond appreciated most. The quiet acknowledgments from working people who understood that careers weren't always linear, that second acts were possible, that value existed beyond titles and offices. As they rode the elevator up, Tommy fidgeted with excitement. Will I get to see the computers? The ones that think like people? Raymond smiled. They don't exactly think like people, but yes, you'll see the labs where we build and test the systems. Do they have feelings? Can they get sad? No, but they can recognize when people are sad, or happy, or confused. That's part of what makes our system special. It pays attention to how humans are feeling and adapts to help them. Tommy considered this. So they're like really good helpers who notice if you're having a bad day. That's actually a perfect description, Raymond said, impressed by his son's intuition. The elevator doors opened onto the 47th floor, now familiar territory for Raymond. Several engineers were already there despite the weekend, some with their own children in tow. Sophia approached carrying a model ship. Tommy, we've been waiting for you. Want to help us test something cool? Tommy looked to his father, who nodded encouragement. Sophia led Tommy to a large display table where a miniature supply chain had been constructed. Tiny ships, trucks, warehouses, all connected to sensors and small motors. This is our demonstration model, Sophia explained. It shows how North Star works in the real world. Other children gathered around as Sophia initiated a simulation. The little vehicles began moving along predetermined routes. Then she introduced a disruption, a storm that closed a shipping lane. The system recalculated, rerouting vehicles in real time. Now you try, she told Tommy, handing him a small tablet. Create a problem for the system to solve. Tommy's face scrunched in concentration as he tapped the screen, blocking roads and shutting down warehouses. The miniature world adapted, finding new pathways, maintaining flow despite mounting challenges. It's like a puzzle that solves itself, Tommy said, eyes wide with wonder. That's exactly what it is, Sophia agreed. And the best part is, it learns from mistakes. Watch what happens when I create the same problem twice. She demonstrated how the system responded more efficiently the second time, having remembered the previous solution. It remembers, Tommy exclaimed, like how I remember my spelling words after I practice. Similar, yes, Sophia laughed, though I bet you learn faster. Raymond watched from a distance, chest tight with emotion. This was his son engaging with the world of ideas that had once been Raymond's entire identity, the world he'd set aside but never stopped loving. He's a natural, said a voice beside him. Walter Grayson stood there, leaning on his cane, eyes twinkling. Takes after his mother, Raymond replied. Catherine could see patterns nobody else noticed. He takes after both of you, Walter corrected. The boy has your patience, your methodical approach. Doesn't rush to conclusions. They watched as Tommy carefully tested the system's limits, adding complexity rather than simply breaking things as some of the other children were doing. You know, Walter said quietly, watching him reminds me of my Michael. Same careful approach, same curiosity. The old man's voice carried the weight of old grief. He would have been about your age now. Raymond had learned bits and pieces about Walter's estranged son, who died of cancer years before. The parallels to his own loss of Catherine were striking. What was he like? Raymond asked. Walter's eyes remained on Tommy, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. Brilliant, sensitive, always asking why, never satisfied with simple answers. Wanted to be a doctor, would have been a good one too. He shifted his weight, wincing slightly at the pain in his hip. The work consumed me back then. Horizon was everything, my identity, my purpose. I thought I was building something for him to inherit, but what he needed was a father who showed up. Raymond understood all too well how career could become all-consuming. In his previous life at MIT before Catherine's illness, he'd often lost himself in research, stayed late at the lab, missed dinners. It's a difficult balance, Raymond acknowledged. There is no balance, Walter said firmly. There are just choices. Every day, 100 little choices about what matters most. He nodded toward Tommy. You've been making the right ones. Victoria's looking for you, Walter mentioned, changing the subject. Something about the Westfield meeting next week. Raymond nodded. The Pinnacle partnership is moving forward. They want to integrate North Star into their commercial platforms. Quite a turnaround from trying to bury us 3 months ago. That's business, I suppose. Today's enemy is tomorrow's ally. Walter chuckled. In my day, we had more straightforward words for people like James Westfield. Victoria joined them, tablet in hand. Raymond, sorry to interrupt your Saturday, but she stopped noticing Tommy at the demonstration table. Is that your son, the one I've heard so much about, but barely met? Raymond nodded. That's Tommy. Victoria watched the boy for a moment. He's methodical, thoughtful. Most kids just try to break the system. He's testing boundaries, Raymond explained, finding the edge cases where failure occurs. It's how you learn a system's true capabilities. Like father, like son, Victoria smiled. The partnership documents from Pinnacle arrived. There's something concerning in the fine print. Can we discuss? Raymond glanced at Tommy, still absorbed in the demonstration. Sophia's got him engaged for at least another half hour, Walter offered. I'll keep an eye on him. In Victoria's office, she pulled up the contract on a large screen. Page 47, section 12.3, she indicated. Pinnacle wants exclusive rights to any trust protocol implementations we develop for the next 5 years. Raymond frowned. That would hamstring our ability to evolve the technology independently. Exactly, but there's more. She flipped to another section. They're insisting that you personally lead the integration team. That means regular travel to their headquarters in Seattle, extended stays during critical phases. That's not possible, Raymond said immediately. I have Tommy. I can't be away for extended periods. Victoria nodded. I told Westfield as much. He suggested that perhaps your role could be advisory instead, with a significant reduction in your compensation and equity position. Raymond understood the maneuver. Westfield was trying to separate him from his creation, reduce his influence while still extracting value from his innovation. This isn't a partnership, Raymond said quietly. It's an acquisition by stealth. I agree. The question is, how do we respond? Raymond considered it for a moment. We need leverage, something Westfield wants that he can't get elsewhere. North Star is already that leverage. They've admitted they can't match our optimization capabilities, but they believe they can replicate it eventually with enough time and resources. We need something they can't reverse engineer. Raymond paced the office, thinking aloud. What if we demonstrate an application of North Star they haven't considered? Something so compelling it changes the negotiation dynamic. Victoria leaned forward. What kind of application? I've been working on extending the trust protocols to human-machine interfaces, teaching AI systems to build appropriate trust relationships with human operators based on behavioral patterns and contextual awareness. Is it ready to demonstrate? Raymond shook his head. Not yet. It needs another month of development. But if we had it, Westfield would have to negotiate on our terms, Victoria finished. No exclusivity, no relocation requirements. Exactly. The question is whether we can delay the partnership discussions. Victoria smiled. Leave that to me. Contract negotiations can always find reasons for delays. Swearing. The following Monday, Raymond arrived at the lab earlier than usual. The human-machine trust interface was a side project he'd been developing in his limited spare time. To accelerate it would require full focus and additional resources. Ethan and Sophia joined him, curious about the new directive from Victoria. Human-machine trust interfaces, Ethan questioned. That's venturing into uncharted territory. Raymond nodded. Most AI systems treat human operators as either infallible authorities or limited overseers. Neither approach optimizes decision-making in complex scenarios. He sketched on the whiteboard his preferred method despite the advanced digital tools available. What we need is a dynamic trust relationship. The system evaluates operator decisions against outcomes, building a contextual trust profile that informs how much autonomy it assumes in different scenarios. Sophia caught on quickly. So in situations where the human has demonstrated good judgment, the AI defers more readily. But where the human has made errors, the system provides stronger guidance or assumes greater control. Raymond confirmed. It's like teaching the AI to be a good co-pilot instead of either a passive passenger or an adversarial autopilot. Ethan looked skeptical. The computational requirements would be enormous, and the ethical implications are precisely why we need to develop this thoughtfully, Raymond agreed. But imagine the application's medical diagnosis systems that know when to trust a doctor's intuition versus when to challenge a potential error. Military systems that adapt to commander experience levels in the field. Or air traffic control, Sophia added, helping novice controllers more than veterans. Raymond nodded. Exactly. It's about creating a system that recognizes human expertise isn't binary, it's contextual, domain-specific, and evolving. He began to sketch a more detailed architecture on the whiteboard. The core concept was elegant, but the implementation would be challenging. They'd need to develop new metrics for measuring human performance across different domains, new algorithms for calibrating trust levels, and new interface designs that communicated the system's confidence levels without overwhelming operators. We need to start with a prototype domain, Raymond decided, something complex enough to demonstrate the concept but constrained enough to be manageable. Emergency response, Ethan suggested. It's high-stakes, time-sensitive, involves multiple agencies with different expertise levels. Raymond nodded. Good thinking. Let's start there. For the next week, the team worked intensively on the interface. They converted a corner of the lab into a simulated emergency operations center with multiple workstations and large displays showing evolving crisis scenarios. They recruited volunteers from the company to play roles, some experienced managers, others novices, and tracked how the system adapted to different operator styles and expertise levels. Raymond found himself drawing on unexpected aspects of his past. His time as a janitor had taught him how different people approach problems, who panicked under pressure, who remained calm, who sought help, who tried to handle everything alone. These human factors were critical to the trust interface design. The system needs to recognize personality types, he explained to the team. Some operators need information presented differently than others. Some respond better to direct alerts, others to subtle nudges. Sophia adjusted the interface parameters, like how some people need coffee before any serious conversation and others are ready to go first thing in the morning. Raymond laughed. Exactly. AI systems typically present the same interface to everyone. Ours will adapt not just to expertise, but to cognitive styles. By the end of the week, they had a functioning prototype. It wasn't perfect, but it demonstrated the core concept in AI system that built a dynamic relationship with its human partners, adjusting its behavior based on what it learned about the operator's strengths and limitations. We need to test this with someone completely unfamiliar with the system, Raymond said. Someone who hasn't been part of the development. Ethan hesitated. Victoria asked us not to share this with anyone outside the core team until after the pinnacle negotiations. I wasn't thinking of an outsider, Raymond clarified. I was thinking of Walter. Walter Grayson had seen countless technologies come and go in his long career. His perspective would be invaluable, and his decades of experience managing complex systems would stress test the interface in ways younger engineers might not imagine. The following morning, Walter arrived at the lab curious about Raymond's invitation. So you want an old dog to try your new tricks? He chuckled, settling into the operator's chair. Something like that, Raymond smiled. Just interact with the system naturally. It'll be simulating an oil refinery, emergency, multiple systems, failing, potential, environmental impact worker, safety concerns. Walter adjusted his reading glasses. Been a while since I managed a crisis, real or simulated. That's fine, the system should adapt to you. For the first 10 minutes, Walter struggled. The interface felt foreign, the alerts overwhelming. His decisions were tentative, sometimes contradictory. The simulated crisis worsened, but then something shifted. The system began presenting information differently, fewer text alerts, more visual cues. It prioritized certain data streams over others, matching Walter's attention patterns. It began offering more context for recommended actions, sensing his desire to understand why rather than simply what. By the 30-minute mark, Walter was handling the simulation with remarkable effectiveness. The system had learned his preferences, adapted to his decision-making style, and established a working partnership. When the simulation ended, Walter leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. That was unlike anything I've experienced with a computer system, he said slowly. At first, it felt like it was fighting me. Then it felt like it was teaching me. And by the end, Raymond prompted, by the end, it felt like we were working together, really together, not just me giving commands and it executing them. Walter removed his glasses, cleaning them with his handkerchief. It reminded me of the best engineering partnerships I've had, where you develop a shorthand, an understanding of how the other person thinks. Raymond nodded, pleased. That's exactly what we're aiming for. This goes far beyond logistics optimization. Walter observed, echoing what they all expected Westfield to say. This is fundamentally changing how humans and machines work together. That's the idea, Raymond confirmed. North Star isn't just about moving goods efficiently. It's about a new model of collaboration between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. Walter's weathered face broke into a rare full smile. Son, I've been in technology for over 50 years. I've seen innovations come and go. Most are incremental, faster, smaller, cheaper versions of what came before. He gestured to the simulation station. This is different. This is one of those watershed moments that changes the direction of an entire field. Coming from Walter Grayson, these words carried profound weight. The team exchanged glances, a mixture of pride and renewed determination in their eyes. How soon can we demonstrate this to Westfield? Victoria asked when they briefed her on the progress. We need another week of refinement, Raymond answered. The core functionality is solid, but we need to polish the interface and expand the scenario options. Victoria nodded. I'll schedule the meeting for next Thursday. That gives you 10 days. And if it's not ready, Ethan asked. Victoria's expression hardened slightly. It needs to be ready. Westfield is getting impatient, and our delaying tactics are wearing thin. As they left Victoria's office, Sophia nudged Raymond. No pressure, right? Just the future of the company and your work-life balance hanging in the balance. Raymond managed a smile. Just another day at the office. Tomo? At home that evening, Raymond found Tommy at the kitchen table surrounded by school papers. The boy's face was uncharacteristically serious. "Everything okay, buddy?" Raymond asked, setting down his bag. Tommy pushed a paper toward him. "Career day is next Friday. We're supposed to bring our parents to talk about their jobs." Raymond reviewed the form. "I'd be happy to come. I can talk about how we design computer systems that help solve problems." "That's just it," Tommy said, his voice uncertain. "Joey Martinez's dad is a firefighter. Amber's mom flies helicopters. And you used to just clean floors." The words stung, though Raymond knew Tommy didn't mean them cruelly. He sat down beside his son. "Does it bother you that I was a janitor?" Tommy shook his head quickly. "No, I was never ashamed of you, Dad. Never." He struggled to find the right words. "But now you do this really important computer stuff, and you're in magazines and people call you Dr. Miller instead of just Mr. Miller. And I don't know how to explain all that." Raymond understood the dilemma. How did a 9-year-old explain his father's unusual career trajectory to classmates? "You know," Raymond said carefully, "I think the most interesting part of my job isn't what I do now. It's that I've done different things at different times in my life. I've been a professor, a janitor, and now a systems architect. And each job taught me something valuable." Tommy considered this. "Like what?" "Well, being a professor taught me how to explain complicated ideas. Being a janitor taught me how systems really work from the ground up and how to fix things when they break. And now I'm using both those skills in my current job." Raymond took a blank sheet of paper and drew 3 columns. "Maybe for career day we could talk about how different jobs connect to each other in ways people don't expect. How no honest work is ever wasted." Tommy's face brightened. "Could we bring in your old mop and your professor glasses like show and tell?" Raymond laughed. "I think we could manage that." As he helped Tommy plan his career day presentation, Raymond reflected on how his son's perspective had shifted. 6 months ago, Tommy had worried about stability, whether his father would still take him to school, whether Mrs. Henderson would still watch him after. Now he was grappling with identity and perception, how to reconcile the different versions of his father that he and the world had known. It was, Raymond realized, a healthy sign. Tommy was secure enough in the essentials to worry about the peripherals. Progress. Walter Grayson found Raymond in the lab late one evening surrounded by simulation results and half-empty coffee cups. "You're pushing yourself too hard," the older man observed. "Reminds me of myself at your age, thinking I could solve everything with enough time and brain power." Raymond rubbed his tired eyes. "Did you solve everything?" Walter settled into a chair, his movements deliberate with age. "The technical problems, most of them eventually. The human ones, those were harder. We're making progress on the interface," Raymond said. "The trust calibration algorithms are showing promise in simulations." "That's not what I meant." Walter gestured around the empty lab. "You're here at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. Where's Tommy?" "Mrs. Henderson is watching him. She's very reliable." "I'm sure she is, but she's not his father." Raymond felt a flicker of defensiveness. "I'm doing this for him, for our future." Walter nodded slowly. "I understand that better than you might think. I had a son too, you know. Michael. Brilliant boy." "Had?" Raymond asked softly. "He died 12 years ago. Cancer like your wife. But before that we were estranged for nearly a decade." Walter's weathered face showed ancient pain. "I was building Horizon, changing the world. Always another meeting, another breakthrough, another reason to miss baseball games and science fairs." He fixed Raymond with a penetrating gaze. "By the time I realized my mistake, I'd missed his childhood. We reconciled before the end, thank God, but I can never get those years back." Raymond was silent, absorbing the warning. "The difference between us," Walter continued, "is that I had a wife at home with Michael. You're all Tommy has. Don't repeat my mistake, son." Before Raymond could respond, his phone rang. Mrs. Henderson's number. "Raymond, I'm so sorry to call this late. Tommy's fine, but he's very upset. He had a nightmare about his mother, and he's asking for you." "I'll be right there," Raymond promised, already grabbing his jacket. Walter nodded approvingly. "Go. The algorithms will wait. Boys grow up whether we're watching or not." At home, Raymond found Tommy curled on Mrs. Henderson's couch, face tear-streaked and pale. "Hey, buddy, he said gently, sitting beside his son. I heard you had a bad dream. Tommy nodded, leaning into his father's embrace. I dreamed Mom was trying to find us, but she couldn't because we weren't in our old apartment anymore. She was looking everywhere, but we weren't there. Raymond felt a lump in his throat. Tommy rarely spoke of such fears. Your mom would always find us, Raymond assured him. She was the smartest person I ever knew. Nothing could keep her from you if she was looking. But what if she doesn't know where to look? Raymond considered his answer carefully. Tommy, I believe that whatever part of your mom still exists, her soul, her love, her essence, it isn't limited by ordinary things like addresses and buildings. She's connected to you by something much stronger than that. Like what? Like the way you have her smile, the way you solve puzzles like she did, the way you care about people's feelings. Raymond brushed Tommy's hair from his forehead. She's part of you always, and that means she's never really lost. Tommy was quiet for a moment, processing this. Dad, can we visit her grave this weekend? I want to tell her about my bridge project and your new job. Of course we can, Raymond promised. First thing Saturday morning. As he carried his half-asleep son back to their apartment, Raymond silently thanked Walter for his timely warning. Some deadlines could be extended, some meetings could be rescheduled. But moments like these, when Tommy needed him not as a provider, but as a father, these were non-negotiable. The Pinnacle Partnership meeting was scheduled for the following week. Victoria had successfully delayed the negotiations, citing legal reviews and technical assessments. But James Westfield was growing impatient. He called twice yesterday, Victoria told Raymond during their morning briefing. He's suspicious that we're stalling. We are stalling, Raymond pointed out. Yes, but we don't want him to know that. How close are we with the human-machine interface? Raymond hesitated. The core functionality is sound, but we haven't done enough real-world testing to demonstrate it conclusively. Victoria checked her calendar. Westfield arrives Monday. That gives us 5 more days. We'll be ready, Raymond promised, but I need to leave early today. Tommy has a science fair at school. Victoria smiled. The bridge project. He mentioned it when he visited. That's the one. He's been working on it for weeks. Go. Be there for him. We'll manage here. As Raymond drove to Tommy's school that afternoon, he reflected on Walter's warning. The old man was right, these moments wouldn't come again. Tommy was growing up so fast, changing in subtle ways each day. The school gymnasium was packed with parents and students standing beside project displays. Raymond spotted Tommy at his table, carefully adjusting his model bridge made from popsicle sticks and string. Dad, you made it? Tommy's face lit up with relief and joy. Wouldn't miss it, buddy. Raymond examined the bridge. This looks fantastic. Tell me how it works. Tommy launched into an enthusiastic explanation of tension and compression, forces, load distribution, and structural integrity. His terminology wasn't always precise, but his understanding of the fundamental concepts was impressive. And see the truss cables here. Tommy pointed. They're like your truss protocols. They help different parts work together when there's too much weight. Raymond blinked in surprise. You've been listening to my work discussions. Tommy nodded. Sometimes when you're talking on the phone, I like hearing about the robot brains trusting people. It's like my bridge. Everything has to trust the other parts to do their job. The simplicity and profundity of the comparison struck Raymond deeply. His son had grasped the essential concept that many engineers with advanced degrees struggle to articulate. That's exactly right, Tommy. That's exactly what we're trying to build. As they walked around viewing other projects, Raymond noticed how many parents stopped to speak with Tommy, asking questions about his bridge. His son answered confidently, occasionally glancing at Raymond for confirmation, but mostly managing on his own. Dr. Miller, called a voice. Raymond turned to see Ms. Perkins, Tommy's teacher, approaching. I've been hoping to meet you. Tommy's been telling us about your work for months, but I have to admit, I thought he might be embellishing a bit. Understandable, Raymond smiled. It's been a rather unusual career path. He brought in that Technology Today magazine with you on the cover. The whole class was quite impressed. She lowered her voice slightly, especially since some of the children, well, they knew you previously as the janitor, Raymond finished for her. It's okay, that's what I was, and there's no shame in it. Ms. Perkins nodded appreciatively. That's exactly the message Tommy has been sharing. He told the class that all jobs matter, and sometimes people do different jobs at different times in their lives. Raymond felt a surge of pride. His son had not only accepted the complicated truth of their lives, but had found a way to share it with others that preserved dignity and perspective. Later, as they celebrated Tommy's second-place ribbon with ice cream, Raymond found himself taking mental notes. The way Tommy had described trust in his bridge model had illuminated something Raymond had been missing in the interface design. Tommy, he said, when you talked about the trust cables in your bridge, you said they help different parts work together. How do they know how much weight each part can hold? Tommy thought for a moment, licking his chocolate cone. They don't exactly know, but they're connected, so when one part feels too much weight, the cables spread it around to the other parts. And what happens if one cable breaks? Then the other cables have to work harder, Tommy explained. That's why you need more than one. So there's, what did you call it? Redundancy. Raymond nodded, the pieces falling into place. That's brilliant, Tommy. The system needs to be interconnected enough that trust can be redistributed when one component fails. Tommy grinned, chocolate ice cream on his chin. Are you going to use my bridge idea for your computer brains? I think I am, Raymond admitted. Sometimes the simplest explanations are the best ones. That night after Tommy was asleep, Raymond called Sophia. I think we've been approaching this wrong, he said without preamble. We've been designing the trust interface as a one-way evaluation system, the AI assessing human reliability. But true trust is bidirectional. What do you mean? The system needs to demonstrate trustworthiness to the human operator, just as the human demonstrates trustworthiness to the system. It's a relationship, not just an assessment. The revelation led to a fundamental redesign of the interface. Instead of simply evaluating human decisions, the system would now provide transparency into its own decision-making process, allowing humans to build appropriate trust in the AI's capabilities and limitations. By Sunday night, the eve of Westfield's arrival, the team had a working prototype ready for demonstration. The human-machine trust interface now showed remarkable adaptability across various scenarios, from medical diagnostics to emergency response situations. This is revolutionary, Victoria said after reviewing the final tests. It changes the entire value proposition of North Star. Raymond nodded, exhausted but satisfied. It's not just about optimizing routes or supply chains anymore. It's about optimizing human-machine collaboration in any complex system. Westfield won't see this coming, Victoria smiled. We're no longer negotiating about a logistics platform. We're negotiating about the future of human-AI interaction. The night before the crucial meeting, Raymond took a rare evening completely off. He and Tommy made spaghetti together, played checkers, and watched an old movie Raymond remembered from his own childhood. No work calls, no emails, no diagrams sketched on napkins. As he tucked Tommy in, his son asked sleepily, Dad, are you nervous about tomorrow? Raymond considered the question honestly. A little, but not as much as I might have been before. Why not? Because I figured out what matters most, Raymond said simply, and that makes all other decisions easier. Tommy smiled in understanding completely. Me too, Dad. I know what matters most too. James Westfield arrived at Horizon Dynamics with an entourage of lawyers and technical specialists. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced, his Italian suit impeccable. At 62, he carried himself with the confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. Victoria, always a pleasure, he said smoothly. I trust we can finalize our partnership today. My legal team has been very patient with the delays. Victoria matched his smile. We've prepared something special for you today, James. I think it will reframe our discussions in productive ways. The delegation moved to the demonstration lab, where Raymond and his team waited. Walter Grayson sat in his usual corner chair, observing quietly. Dr. Miller, Westfield acknowledged with a nod. Your work continues to impress from afar. I'm eager to see how our companies can combine strengths. Raymond maintained a neutral expression. We're eager to show you our latest development. The lights dimmed and Sophia initiated the demonstration. On the main screen, a simulated emergency response scenario unfolded, a wildfire threatening a residential area with multiple evacuation routes becoming compromised in real time. What you're seeing is North Star managing a crisis response, Raymond explained, but with a critical new component, the human-machine trust interface. He directed their attention to a second display showing the interaction between the AI system and a human emergency manager. As conditions changed, the system adjusted how it presented recommendations and how much autonomy it assumed based on the operator's decisions and expertise. The system is learning when to defer to human judgment and when to be more assertive with its recommendations. Raymond continued, it's building a trust relationship that optimizes the combined human-machine decision-making process. Westfield leaned forward, his practiced smile fading into genuine interest. This goes far beyond logistics optimization, he said slowly. Precisely, Victoria agreed. The applications extend to healthcare emergency services, military operations, any domain where humans and AI systems need to collaborate under uncertainty and time pressure. The demonstration continued, showing multiple scenarios where the trust interface significantly improved outcomes compared to either human-only or AI-only decision-making. I'd like to offer you the opportunity to experience it firsthand, Raymond said to Westfield. If you're willing. Westfield hesitated, then nodded. I'm intrigued enough to try. Raymond guided him to the operator's station. We've prepared a corporate merger scenario, something you might find familiar. The system will present market data, regulatory concerns, integration challenges, and stockholder reactions as they evolve. Westfield settled into the chair with the confidence of a man who had navigated dozens of such situations in real life. Let's see what your system can do. For the next 20 minutes, the room watched as Westfield engaged with the interface. At first, he was clearly skeptical, overriding recommendations and pursuing his own approach. The system adapted, providing more context for its suggestions, highlighting potential consequences Westfield might have overlooked. Gradually, a rhythm developed between the executive and the AI. Westfield began to trust certain recommendations while still asserting his expertise in areas where he had deeper knowledge. The simulated merger progressed smoothly, avoiding pitfalls that either Westfield or the AI alone might have missed. When the simulation concluded, Westfield sat back, a look of genuine surprise on his face. That was remarkable, he admitted. I've used decision support systems throughout my career. They're either too rigid to be useful in complex situations or so open-ended that they add little value. He gestured to the interface. This struck a balance I've never experienced before. Raymond nodded. That's because it's not just supporting your decisions. It's building a working relationship with you, learning your strengths, adapting to your style, earning your trust, while also developing appropriate trust in your judgment. And this technology is fully integrated with the North Star Logistics platform. It's built on the same core trust protocols, Raymond confirmed. But as you've seen, the applications extend far beyond logistics. When the lights came up, Westfield's expression had changed. The confident negotiator had been replaced by a thoughtful strategist reassessing his position. This changes our discussion considerably, he admitted. You're not just offering a better logistics platform. You're offering a fundamental advancement in human-AI collaboration. Victoria nodded. Which is why exclusivity arrangements and relocation requirements are off the table. We're prepared to partner with Pinnacle on favorable terms, but North Star's core technology and Dr. Miller's team remain fully independent. Westfield glanced at his lawyers, who looked displeased at this development. Then he turned to Walter. You're enjoying this, aren't you, old friend, watching me get outmaneuvered? Walter's eyes twinkled. I take a certain satisfaction in it, yes. But business isn't personal, Jimmy. It never was. We're offering a genuine partnership that benefits both companies, just not the one-sided arrangement you initially proposed. Westfield considered for a long moment, then nodded. Have your team draw up new terms. I think we have the basis for a more equitable agreement. As the Pinnacle delegation prepared to leave, Westfield paused beside Raymond. I've been in this industry for 40 years, Dr. Miller. I've seen countless innovations, most overhyped, few truly transformative. He glanced back at the demonstration area. What you've created here, it has the potential to fundamentally change how humans and machines work together. Not just in business, but in medicine, education, public safety. Raymond nodded, acknowledging the assessment. I also understand your position on the relocation issue. Westfield continued, surprising Raymond. I raised 2 daughters as a single father after my wife left. Different circumstances, but similar challenges. He smiled slightly. The week I missed my youngest daughter's lead role in the school play, because of a merger negotiation was the week I realized some things can't be delegated or rescheduled. This glimpse of humanity from the corporate shark was unexpected. Raymond offered a genuine smile in return. Thank you for understanding. Westfield extended his hand. I look forward to a productive partnership, Dr. Miller, on terms that work for both our companies and your family. As Pinnacle's delegation filed out to discuss privately, Victoria turned to Raymond with a triumphant smile. You did it again. Raymond shook his head. We did it, the whole team. And Tommy, Sophia added, don't forget to credit your son. His bridge analogy was the breakthrough insight. Raymond smiled. You're right. I'll be sure to tell him tonight. Walter approached, leaning heavily on his cane. Well done, son. You didn't just save Horizon. You may have changed how humans and machines will work together for decades to come. That remains to be seen, Raymond said modestly. Trust an old man who's seen many technological revolutions, Walter insisted. This one matters. So, the following months brought rapid change to Horizon Dynamics. The partnership with Pinnacle expanded Northstar's market reach while preserving the core team's independence. The Defense Department contract was upgraded to include the human-machine trust interface for battlefield logistics and command systems. Horizon's stock price tripled. For Raymond, personally, success brought opportunities he'd never expected. Television interviews, speaking invitations, a cover story in Technology Today titled The Janitor Who Reimagined AI. Job offers from tech giants with compensation packages that seemed unreal. Through it all, he maintained his focus on two priorities, his work at Horizon and his son at home. He declined most interview requests, spoke only at carefully selected events, and politely rejected all recruitment attempts. I don't understand why you won't even consider Google's offer, Victoria said after yet another lucrative proposal arrived. They're offering you 3 times what we can pay, even with your expanded equity package. Raymond smiled. Money isn't everything. Horizon gave me a chance when I was invisible to the world. That matters, and the work we're doing here matters. And Tommy, she asked knowingly, and Tommy has stability here, friends at school, Mrs. Henderson next door, a routine that works for us. Some things are worth more than money. Tommy's school held career day as planned, and Raymond attended in a button-down shirt with his MIT professor glasses in one pocket and a small section of his old janitor's mop in the other. Together, they explained to a classroom of fascinated fourth graders how different jobs connected to different skills and how no honest work was ever wasted. My dad can fix anything, Tommy told his classmates proudly, because he learned how things really work from the bottom up. Raymond noticed something remarkable that day. The children didn't seem particularly impressed by his current title or the magazine covers. What captured their imagination was the journey, the idea that someone could be different things at different times, that careers weren't linear, that second chances existed. Did you always know you'd be a scientist again? One girl asked. Raymond shook his head. For a long time, I thought that part of my life was over. I had to learn that chapters can close without the book ending. On the drive home, Tommy was unusually quiet. Something on your mind, buddy? Raymond asked. I was just thinking about what you said, about chapters closing, but the book still going on. Tommy looked out the window. Do you think Mom's chapter closed too soon? Raymond felt the familiar ache whenever Catherine was mentioned. Yes, I do. Her chapter was too short, but she wrote it beautifully while she could. Tommy nodded, satisfied with the answer. And now we're writing new chapters. That's right, and she'd be very proud of the story we're creating. In late autumn, Raymond received an unexpected honor, the National Science Foundation's Innovation in Computing Award, typically reserved for career achievements by established researchers or industry pioneers. The ceremony was held in Washington, D.C., a black-tie affair attended by scientists, tech leaders, and policymakers. Raymond brought Tommy dressed in his first suit, and Walter, who insisted on attending despite his doctor's concerns about travel at his age. As Raymond took the stage to accept the award, he looked out at the audience faces he'd studied in textbooks, names he'd cited in research papers during his academic days. And in the front row, his son and his mentor both beaming with pride. Thank you for this honor, he began simply. 5 years ago, I was mopping floors at Horizon Dynamics. Not because I lacked education or ability, but because life sometimes takes unexpected turns. He paused, gathering his thoughts. My wife, Catherine, died of cancer when our son was 4. In the aftermath of that loss, my priorities shifted completely. I set aside my research, my academic position, my professional identity, and took whatever work would provide stability for my son. The audience was silent, captivated. I used to clean offices at night while brilliant engineers tried to solve problems those I understood intimately. Sometimes I'd find whiteboards covered in equations that I knew how to solve, but I kept quiet, did my job, went home to my son. That was enough. Raymond looked directly at Tommy. Then one day there was a fire. In trying to help, I accidentally dropped a notebook filled with equations I'd been working on during breaks. That notebook found its way to Victoria Hayes, Horizon's CEO, who recognized its value. She looked past my uniform to see what I could contribute. He held up the award. This recognition isn't just for the technical work we've done with North Star and the human-machine trust interface. It's for everyone who has ever been overlooked because their current circumstances didn't reflect their true capabilities. The single parents working multiple jobs while pursuing degrees. The immigrants whose foreign credentials aren't recognized. The older workers whose experience is dismissed as obsolete. Raymond's voice grew stronger. Talent and insight exist everywhere in every profession, at every level of every organization. Sometimes the solutions we desperately seek are already in the building, just wearing unexpected uniforms. The applause was thunderous. Tommy jumped to his feet, clapping until his hands hurt. Walter wiped a tear from his weathered cheek. Later that night in their hotel room, Raymond helped Tommy loosen his tie. Did you really mean all that stuff, Dad, about me being more important than your work? Every word, Raymond assured him. You will always be the most important thing in my life. Tommy was quiet for a moment. I'm proud of you, Dad. Not because you won an award or because you're famous now. I'm proud because you never gave up even when things were really hard. Raymond pulled his son into a tight hug, words temporarily beyond him. On their last morning in Washington, Raymond took Tommy to the National Air and Space Museum, a place he had dreamed of visiting as a boy, but never had the opportunity. As they stood beneath the Wright brothers' original flyer, Raymond found himself thinking about human innovation and persistence. You know, he told Tommy, those men failed hundreds of times before they succeeded. People thought they were crazy, but they kept trying, kept learning from each mistakes. Tommy studied the primitive aircraft. It doesn't look like much. Neither did your bridge model or my notebook scribbles, but they contained the right ideas. Raymond squeezed his son's shoulder. That's what matters, not how fancy something looks, but whether the fundamental idea is sound. Tommy nodded, processing this wisdom in his own way. Dad, do you think I could be an inventor someday? Raymond smiled. You already are, buddy. That bridge design, the truss cables concept, those were inventions. Good ones. Tommy beamed with pride, and Raymond made a silent promise to nurture that spark. The curiosity, the willingness to try and fail and try again, that formed the foundation of all innovation. 1 year after the breakthrough demonstration of North Star Horizon Dynamics held a ceremony of its own. The newly constructed research wing was being dedicated, and Raymond stood uncomfortably in the spotlight as Victoria unveiled the sign, the Raymond Miller Center for Human-Machine Collaboration. This facility, Victoria announced to the assembled crowd, represents Horizon's commitment to advancing the field Dr. Miller has pioneered. But more importantly, it represents our commitment to finding brilliance wherever it exists, even in the most unexpected places. The center would include not only state-of-the-art research laboratories, but also a comprehensive scholarship program for students from disadvantaged backgrounds, prioritizing single parents and those who had interrupted their education due to family responsibilities. Walter Grayson had been named honorary chairman of the scholarship committee, a position he accepted with characteristic gruffness. About time someone recognized that life experience is as valuable as formal credentials. The building itself was impressive, 5 stories of glass and steel housing the most advanced human-machine research facilities in the country. But what made Raymond most proud was the central atrium where Victoria had commissioned a special installation. We call it the bridge, she explained to the gathered crowd. It represents the connections between human and machine intelligence, between theoretical and practical knowledge, between different phases of life and career. The installation was a massive sculpture of interconnected beams and cables clearly inspired by Tommy's science project model. Beneath it, a plaque read, Inspired by Thomas Miller, age 9, who understood that trust holds all bridges together. Tommy, standing beside his father at the unveiling, gasped when he saw it. "Dad, they made my bridge." "They sure did," Raymond said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your idea was that good." The center's mission extended beyond research. It would host regular workshops for companies seeking to identify hidden talent within their own workforces, would develop tools for better matching skills to needs regardless of formal credentials, and would partner with community colleges to create new pathways for non-traditional students into tech careers. "This isn't just about finding the next Raymond Miller," Victoria explained in her dedication speech. "It's about creating systems that recognize potential in all its forms. Systems that see people not just resumes or uniforms." As Raymond toured the facility after the ceremony, he found himself in a quiet moment with Victoria. "This is too much," he said, echoing his words from that first day in his executive office. "Naming a research center after me?" "No," Victoria replied with the same response as before. "If anything, it's not enough." She gestured around the gleaming labs. "Do you know how many engineers work at Horizon now? Over 3,000? And do you know how many applications we receive each week? Thousands. From people of all backgrounds, all circumstances. People who might never have considered us before your story became public." Raymond hadn't considered this ripple effect of his journey. "The tech industry has a talent problem," Victoria continued. "Not a shortage of talent, but a shortage of vision about where talent can be found. You changed that narrative, Raymond, not just for Horizon, but for the entire field." Walter joined them, moving more slowly now, with age, but his eyes still sharp and bright. "You know what the best part is?" the old man said. "The maintenance staff will be eligible for the educational programs just like everyone else. Full tuition assistance, flexible schedules, mentoring." Raymond smiled. "That feels right." "The head of maintenance told me 3 of his people have already applied," Victoria added. "One wants to study electrical engineering. Another is interested in our coding boot camp. And the third, you'll appreciate, this wants to study theoretical mathematics." "Maybe lightning does strike twice," Walter chuckled. As they walked through the research spaces, Raymond was struck by how much had changed in a single year. North Star's trust protocols had expanded far beyond logistics, influencing fields from emergency management to healthcare to education. The human-machine trust interface was being adapted for applications no one had initially imagined, helping new pilots train with flight simulators, enabling doctors to collaborate with diagnostic AIs, allowing teachers to customize educational software to individual student needs. And through it all, Raymond had managed to keep his promise to Tommy. He was home for dinner most nights, he attended school events and baseball games. He limited his travel to day trips whenever possible, and when longer trips were necessary, Tommy often accompanied him, turning business obligations into adventures they shared. "You found the balance I never did," Walter told him privately. "I thought the work had to come first, that success would give me the freedom to be present later. I was wrong." "I had a good teacher," Raymond replied. "One who warned me before I made the same mistake." Walter's eyes misted slightly. "Then perhaps my own regrets served some purpose, after all." Later that evening, Raymond sat with Tommy on their front porch, not of the tiny apartment they'd shared for years, but of a modest house with a yard purchased 6 months earlier. Tommy was tossing a baseball up and catching it, a new hobby he'd developed with Walter's encouragement. "Dad, do you think Mom can see us? See everything that's happened?" Raymond looked up at the emerging stars. It was a question without a simple answer, yet Tommy deserved his honest thoughts. "I don't know for certain, buddy, but I like to think she can. That she's proud of you growing up so strong and smart. That she's happy we're finding our way forward." Tommy nodded, satisfied with the answer. "I think she can," he said with childlike certainty. "And I think she helped that notebook fall out of your pocket during the fire." Raymond smiled at his son's imagination, yet felt a curious warmth at the thought. Catherine had always believed in him, even when he'd stopped believing in himself. Perhaps her influence continued in ways beyond understanding. "You know what else I think?" Tommy continued. "I think she'd like our new house, especially the garden." Raymond had planted flowers in the small backyard, the same varieties Catherine had once grown on their apartment balcony. It was a small tribute, a way of keeping her present in their new life. "I think she would too," Raymond agreed, "though she'd probably say I'm not watering them correctly." Tommy laughed. "You're not. Mrs. Henderson told me you're supposed to water them in the morning, not at night. Is that right? Well, I guess I'm still learning. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge. It was a simple moment, a father and son on a porch on a warm evening, but Raymond treasured it more than any professional accolade. Hey, Dad, Tommy said eventually. Do you ever miss being a janitor? The question surprised Raymond. Sometimes, actually. There was a simplicity to it. Clear tasks, visible results. I could see exactly what I'd accomplished each day. But you like your new job better, right? Raymond considered this. I like using my mind the way I was trained to. I like solving problems that matter. But what I like most is that this job lets me be more present for you while still doing meaningful work. Tommy seemed satisfied with this answer. I think that's what success really means. Not being famous or having lots of money. Just finding the right balance. Raymond marveled at his son's wisdom. Somehow, through all the changes and challenges, Tommy had developed a perspective that many adults never achieved. Inside the house, Raymond's phone buzzed with messages. Walter suggesting modifications to the scholarship program. Sophia with updates on the latest trust interface improvements. Victoria forwarding press coverage of the center's opening. But those could wait. For now, this moment with Tommy under the emerging stars was exactly where Raymond needed to be. The janitor who saved a tech company had found something far more valuable than professional redemption or industry accolades. He had found his way home. In the end, life rarely follows the paths we imagine for ourselves. Raymond Miller lost a wife, surrendered a career, and spent 5 years mopping floors, while brilliant minds unknowingly walked past the solutions they desperately sought. He sacrificed pride for stability, dreams for duty, visibility for the quiet dignity of providing for his son. Yet in that same journey, he found something many never discover: the humility that comes from honest labor, the perspective that can only be gained from viewing both the heights of academic prestige and the quiet corners of night shift maintenance. And most importantly, the recognition that our true value isn't measured by titles or salaries, but by the steady presence we maintain for those who need us most. Sometimes our greatest innovations emerge not from our moments of triumph, but from our seasons of survival. Sometimes the notebooks we fill during stolen moments between responsibilities hold more wisdom than the ones we write when success surrounds us. And sometimes it takes a child building a bridge from popsicle sticks to remind us that trust between people, between generations, between humans and machines, is what ultimately holds our most important structures together. What notebooks are you filling in? The quiet moments? What wisdom might you be carrying invisible beneath a uniform the world has been trained not to see?